All right, welcome in everyone to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at how the world's become, our own personal backgrounds and experiences, how all that stuff intersects with the professional environments we find ourselves in, whether we're punching a clock for a company or we're serving in public office, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it. It's this fascinating mix, right? This kind of interplay of what we could call professional culture and personal culture. And it really does end up shaping not just what it's like to go to work every day, but the bigger picture too, how businesses and even governments actually function.
So listeners, if you're with us today, it's like we're all putting on our explorer hats because we're going to do a deep dive together into these concepts. Professional culture, personal culture, what do they even mean? How do they bump up against each other? And we've been sifting through a bunch of discussions, articles, all about this stuff playing out in businesses and government. We're going to break it down, make sure it all makes sense, and use some real-world examples so it's not just this vague theoretical thing.
Yeah, we're going to look at how these dynamics play out in different settings. And honestly, that's where it gets really interesting. We see some pretty clear patterns, but also some stark contrasts. So buckle up, everybody.
All right, so let's jump right in. When we throw around this term professional culture, what are we actually talking about? Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Think of it as, well, imagine a company or an organization like it's a country, right? It has its own unique customs, unspoken rules, ways of doing things. That's professional culture.
Yeah.
It's the shared values, the norms, like how people are expected to behave. Some of it you might find written down, like in a handbook or some code of conduct.
Right, the official guidelines?
Exactly. But a lot of it is more like the unwritten rules, the vibe, how things actually get done around here.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But to make it really concrete, could you give us a couple of, contrasting examples so we can picture it in our heads?
Absolutely. Okay. Imagine. Uh, Picture a tech startup, right? Fast growing, lots of energy. Their professional culture might be all about speed. Being adaptable, a willingness to experiment, even fail fast and learn. So you walk in, the atmosphere's super informal, decisions happen quickly, everyone's collaborating.
Right, I can almost see it. The beanbag chairs, the whiteboard scribbles.
Totally. Now, flip the script. Think of a long-standing government agency. Different world, right? Professional culture there.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be more about procedure, following the rules, making sure everything's by the book. Hierarchy matters. Decisions take time. Stability's the name of the game.
So it's like professional culture creates the underlying structure, sets the stage for how people operate within that organization.
You got it. Creates a kind of predictability and, most importantly, is trying to get everyone rowing in the same direction, right? Whether that's inventing the next big thing in a company or serving the public good in government. Makes sense?
Makes total sense.
Mm.
And that's where I think personal culture enters the scene. So how does that piece of the puzzle fit in? What do we mean by that?
So personal culture is all about what you bring to the table. Your own personal beliefs, values, traditions. It's shaped by your upbringing, your life experiences, your identity, all that stuff that makes you you. And it's way less formal than professional culture, of course, but don't underestimate it. It's a powerful force.
Interesting. So how does that then, how does what we bring as individuals affect how we move through our professional lives? How does it play out?
Think of it this way. Your personal culture, it's like a lens, right? A filter you see your work environment through. It shapes how you approach a problem, how you talk to your colleagues, even how you define success, or what's ethical.
Could you give us some real-world examples of that so we can imagine it?
Sure. Let's say someone was raised in a culture where you show a lot of respect for seniority, right? They might hesitate to disagree with their boss in a meeting, even if the company says, hey, speak your mind, we want debate.
So their personal culture might make them a bit more hesitant.
Yeah. Or imagine someone who their whole life they've been big on volunteering, community service. They might gravitate towards projects with a social impact. And their values will shape how they approach those projects for sure.
So this is where it gets interesting to me. The way these two cultures, the professional and personal, come together, it can be a real strength, but also a potential source of clashing.
Oh, absolutely. When they're in sync, it's magic. Diverse viewpoints lead to creativity, better solutions. Like if someone's personal background taught them to be really adaptable, they'll probably thrive in a startup that's constantly changing.
Right, that makes sense. But what about the flip side? What are some of the challenges when those cultures bump heads?
Well, one big one is unconscious bias. Without even realizing it, our personal culture can influence our professional judgments. Maybe a manager favors people who communicate like they do, or hiring practices might subtly exclude certain groups. It's tough because these biases are often hidden.
It's like we have to be really mindful of the blind spots our personal frameworks might be creating.
Exactly. And all this gets even more complex when you consider different sectors, right? Private companies versus government, for example. The goals, the rules, they're so different.
That's a really good point. It makes me think, how does this whole dynamic play out differently in those two worlds? The business world versus, say, a government agency.
Yeah, let's break it down. Let's start with the private sector, companies. What's unique about how professional and personal cultures interact there?
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Well, in business, there's often more wiggle room, more flexibility in shaping the professional culture. Leaders, especially the CEO, can have a huge influence. Like, if the CEO is big on work-life balance, they might introduce policies that allow for flexible hours. Bam, professional culture shift.
So the personal values at the top can really trickle down and impact everyone.
Yep. But there's a potential downside, too. Personal loyalties, friendships, those things can sometimes creep into decision-making. Think about a small company where the founder is really close with certain employees. Promotions, projects. It might not always be 100% based on merit. It can get messy.
Right, those lines can get blurry. Okay, so now, what about government? Agencies, institutions, all that. How's this whole dynamic work in that world?
Government. Buckle up, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
The professional culture is usually way more formal. You've got laws, regulations, a need to be accountable to the public. So everything's designed to ensure fairness and prevent any whiff of bias.
So less freedom for personal values to shape things.
Generally, yeah. Like, sure, a public servant might be deeply passionate about serving their community. That personal commitment is great, but ultimately their actions have to fit within the rules and the laws. Integrity and objectivity, those are paramount.
But didn't some of the stuff we read suggest that personal culture can still play a positive role in government? Something about, like, humanizing the system?
Oh, absolutely. And this is what's fascinating. A public official who genuinely understands the people they serve, their struggles, their hopes, that empathy can make all the difference. It can lead to policies that are more responsive, more effective. When you bring a human touch to government, within the professional boundaries, of course people feel seen and heard. It builds trust.
So it's a delicate balancing act. Okay, we've looked at what these cultures are, how they can clash, how things are different in business versus government. Now, the big question. What can organizations actually do to navigate this whole thing better? How do they make the most of it?
There are some concrete steps they can take. One of the most important is raising awareness. Training programs that help people understand their own values and how those might clash or align with the professional culture.
So helping people anticipate and navigate those cultural bumps.
Exactly. In companies, things like diversity and inclusion initiatives, they're huge. Bringing in people from all sorts of backgrounds, that's how you get fresh ideas, better problem solving. Mentorship programs can help, too, bridge those cultural gaps within the organization.
And on the government side.
In government, it's all about clear ethical guidelines and really strong oversight. That helps make sure that personal influences are working for the public good, not creating conflicts of interest. Transparency in decision-making, that's vital for keeping the public's trust.
It sounds like leadership plays a really key role in all this, right? Setting the tone.
Leaders are crucial, absolutely. If they model inclusive behavior, respect for different perspectives, while still upholding those core professional values, well, that sets the bar for everyone else. We saw some great examples in the research, public officials who really weave their personal commitment to certain values into their professional duties, and business leaders who cultivate creativity without letting go of the big picture.
So it's about walking that tightrope. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. What are the key takeaways you'd want our listeners to walk away with from all this talk about professional and personal culture?
The big thing to remember is this. Professional culture, that's the blueprint, the framework, the rules of the game, right? It's how organizations get things done. Personal culture, that's the unique spice each individual brings to the mix. And their dance. That's what makes work life interesting and honestly impacts how well things work.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, right?
Yeah.
It's different in different contexts.
Exactly. The balance is different in a fast-moving, competitive business versus a government agency that's all about public trust and due process.
So it's a constant balancing act, a journey of figuring out how to leverage the strengths of both professional and personal cultures while keeping an eye on the potential pitfalls.
You got it. It's a never-ending process, and it demands awareness, smart strategies, and leaders who get it, who value both sides of the coin.
Well, this has been a truly insightful look into something that let's be honest, impacts every single one of us who's ever worked a job, often in ways we don't even realize.
Couldn't agree more. And to all our listeners out there, hopefully this deep dive has helped you connect some dots, helped you see how the professional world and who you are as a person, how those two things are in constant conversation.
And on that note, here's something to chew on as you go about your day. Think about your own workplace. How do your personal values, your life experiences, how do they fit in with the professional culture there? Do they clash? Do they blend? What does that mean for your own journey? Could there be ways to make that relationship even better, more integrated? See what you discover as you reflect on all we've discussed today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.